After his death in 2018, it was revealed that Stan Lee suffered from repeated elder abuse from various handlers, associates, and members of his family. After his wife passed away in 2018, Stan's inner circle reportedly alienated him from the rest of his friends and family, forged his signatures to extort his money, and dragged him to conventions when he was exhausted and clearly had no idea what was happening.
Stan Lee, S-T-A-N-L-E-E.
On one occasion, a former business associate went to Stan's personal nurse with a forged document, giving him authority to order a blood sample from Stan. He then told the nurse to fill as many vials as she could, and she agreed, taking so much blood that Stan reportedly felt dizzy. The stolen blood was then put into pens that Stan used to sign autographs, making them far more valuable since they contained his DNA. In a separate incident, while on a podcast about Lee's final days, his former business manager Brad Herman claimed that Stan's daughter JC once erupted in anger, grabbed his father by the neck, and slammed his head into the back of a chair. Despite a contusion on his head, Stan allegedly begged Herman not to go to police in order to protect his daughter. During Hurricane Camille in 1969, the rainfall was so heavy in Virginia that birds were drowning in trees. The storm dumped 28 inches of rain over a 5-hour span and took the lives of over 100 people. After his wife died during a long route to the hospital, Dashrath Manji devoted his life to making the route shorter. He spent 22 years carving a 300-foot path through a mountain using only a hammer and chisel, and managed to shorten the journey from 34 miles to 9. This man accidentally entered the real-life backrooms and was found dead 3 weeks later. In January of 2017, 71-year-old Bernard Gore was supposed to meet his wife and daughter at a Westfield mall in Sydney, Australia, but never showed up. He'd apparently been doing some shopping on his own before they showed up, then completely disappeared without a trace. After frantically searching for her husband who suffered from dementia, Angela Gore filed a missing persons report with local authorities. Bernard was last seen by a store clerk who said the man looked confused on the morning of his disappearance. Investigators were initially hopeful when surveillance footage showed Bernard walking towards a fire escape, but they didn't realize that through the exit was a complete labyrinth of stairwells, confusing hallways, and self-locking doors. In fact, the entire fire escape stretches for 8 miles, and numerous mall shops have been lost down there before, with one woman describing it as a maze from a nightmare. Accordingly, it took police 3 weeks to finally locate Bernard's lifeless body in the stairwell. He was likely wandering around the fire escape for up to an entire week before eventually succumbing to natural causes. Bernard's death was officially ruled the result of a misadventure. Lead singer of the Ramones, Joey Ramone, was born with a parasitic twin growing out of his back that was later removed through surgery. Joey was also diagnosed with OCD, schizophrenia, and Marfan syndrome, resulting in his frail health and striking physique. On the day of his assassination, at least 9 of JFK's Secret Service agents were recovering from an all-night bender that ended at 5 a.m. Their hangovers combined with sleep deprivation may have played a crucial role in the agents' inabilities to respond after the first shot. The 1930s musician Ross Colombo was accidentally shot and killed by his best friend. His siblings went to great lengths to hide the news from his mother, who suffered from a serious heart condition. They wrote fake letters to her and played records to simulate his radio show. This continued on for a decade until she passed away in 1944. Kim Jong-un's older brother, Kim Jong-nam, was supposed to be the next heir to North Korea's throne, but he's believed to have lost his position at the age of 30 after trying to get into Disneyland, Japan with a fake passport. Because of the embarrassment he caused his father, Jong-nam was exiled from the country and later assassinated by the North Korean government after many failed attempts. In 2006, 27-year-old Ohio State medical student Brian Schaefer entered a bar with some friends. After security cams recorded him entering through the bar's only public entrance, Schaefer was never seen exiting the bar and has not been seen nor heard from since. Here's an example of a pillory, which was used as a form of capital punishment in 19th century China. The man in the photo can't reach his face with his hands, so he must rely on pedestrians to feed him and give him water like a dog. The device also made it incredibly hard to sleep comfortably, essentially torturing the prisoner until they died from starvation. This is the tragic story of the Boy Scout who made his entire neighborhood radioactive. Nicknamed the Nuclear Boy Scout, David Hahn was a teenager from Michigan who was obsessed with nuclear radiation. When he was only 15, David attempted to build a nuclear reactor in his backyard shed, using radioactive material from household items including vintage clocks, smoke detectors, and gun sights. Within 2 years, David had built a functioning reactor which gave off enough radiation to be detected throughout his entire neighborhood. David was soon caught by police when they found hazardous materials in his car during a routine stop and thought he was building an atomic bomb. When David's shed was raided by the EPA, they determined that his project had created dangerous levels of radiation, leading them to dismantle the building and classify it as hazardous waste. This mugshot from 2006 shows David covered in sores as a result of his extensive exposure to radiation. This, combined with continuous legal and mental health issues, led to David's early passing at the age of 39 from an accidental overdose. George Lopez has a genetic condition that caused his kidneys to slowly deteriorate. So when he needed a new kidney in 2005, his wife Ann gave him one of her own. A couple years later, George reportedly cheated on his wife, then divorced her in 2010, all while wearing her kidney. In 1995, a substitute school bus driver in Illinois stopped at a red light with the back part of the bus still on some train tracks. The children were screaming for her to move the bus forward as a train approached, but she was confused about what they meant. The train struck the bus at 60 miles per hour and 7 children were killed. In 2018, Gloria Williams pleaded guilty to posing as a nurse to abduct Kamaya Mobley from her mother's arms in the maternity ward. She was sentenced to 18 years in prison, the same length of time Kamaya was separated from her birth family. Liam Neeson's wife, actress Natasha Richardson, was taking a beginner ski lesson on a bunny hill when she suddenly fell without a helmet on. She initially refused any medical help but complained about a severe headache a few hours later. Richardson was soon flown to the hospital where she died 2 days later from a brain bleed. A park ranger on Rinka Island once sat down in his office and was attacked by a Komodo dragon hiding under his desk. Turns out the cleaner had accidentally left the door open the night before and the massive lizard snuck inside. The ranger received 30 stitches at the hospital and managed to survive, but has since quit his job and now suffers from PTSD. In 2001, actress Rebecca Gayheart struck and killed a 9-year-old boy who was attempting to cross the street. Other cars had stopped to allow the boy to cross, but she apparently lost her patience and drove into the turn lane to go around them, accidentally running the boy over in the process. She only received probation and a $2,800 fine. A Canadian man getting a rectal exam by his doctor at the hospital was observed by people he assumed were medical students. But he ended up suing the hospital and the observers after learning they were actors who played doctors on the TV show Saving Hope and were trying to prepare for their roles. A man from Alabama recently died after having the wrong organ removed during a horrific surgery in Florida. 70-year-old Bill Bryan was scheduled to have his spleen removed, but the surgeon mistakenly removed his liver instead. According to medical records, the surgeon didn't realize his mistake at the time and proceeded to label the removed liver specimen as spleen. Nicknamed the Princess of R&B, popular singer Aaliyah lost her life in a tragic private plane crash when she was just 22 years old. Despite being warned that there was far too much wait for a safe flight, she and her entourage were eager to return home and demanded to leave immediately. Shortly after takeoff, the plane lost its balance and crashed just 200 feet from the runway, killing everyone on board. In 2013, the body of 17-year-old Kendrick Johnson was found inside of a rolled-up gym mat at his Georgia high school. Authorities later concluded that he had become trapped upside down while trying to retrieve his shoes and eventually died from positional asphyxia. In 2002, schizophrenic British artist Richard Sumner entered a remote forest in Wales. He apparently handcuffed himself to a tree and threw the keys out of reach. His skeleton was found 3 years later, with evidence suggesting he likely regretted his decision.